What's up, folks? Welcome to DoD episode 8, and we've got a super fun dish planned for today. We're doing mussels, beautiful Washington State mussels, and we're gonna fry them, and we're gonna use these sprouted lentils to help with that. Plus, we're adding a little bit of luxury with this, saffron. So we actually need to start this dish 2 days in advance, and that's to allow these beauties, these lentils, to naturally ferment, much like a naturally leavened bread dough. I have two kinds of lentils here, red ones and green ones, and I soak these for about 8 hours. After that, I rinse them over and over again until the water runs clear, because apparently lentils have a starch in them that prevents anything from sprouting or fermenting. Who knew? After that, I just left them out, let them sit for about 12 hours, and they sprouted. They got these little tiny baby sprouts in them. That's good, we want that. I took those lentils and pureed them with a little bit of water, just spun it in a blender until I got this batter, let it sit out for about 12 hours, and you wanna wait until it gets nice and bubbly. And that's where we're at now. So it's tricky here because the recipe that I got for the fermented dal had rice in it, and that's more or less like a dosa batter, but I want something a little bit more hearty. I looked up a sourdough pancake recipe, and I'm gonna alter that a little bit. I have some semolina here, as well as some all-purpose flour. I'm gonna combine these together, and I'm gonna let the fermentation process continue on. Basically treat it like feeding a dough. Mussels. I have beautiful Washington State mussels. These have been rinsed, and the next move here is we need to clean the beards off. It's just as easy as taking the little beard section here and pulling it down towards the hinge section of the mussel, and it should just come loose. So I've got a ripping hot pot right here. Mussels are nice and clean. They're not sitting in any water. Just to be safe, I'm gonna let those go in first. And then our water. Super, super hot, lid goes on, and those are gonna go back on the heat and make sure the water goes as fast as it can to 212 degrees. Mussels are in a nice thin layer, and that's to make sure that the mussels open super, super fast, because we're gonna cook them twice, so we don't want them to dry out at all. All right, mussels are all cooked. We're gonna take them out, put them on a tray, like so. Now, I don't have a blast chiller or a big fridge here, so I'm just gonna stash them in the freezer here in my apartment. That should do the job if we just keep an eye on them. So, in this new meantime that we've created, let's start our saffron emulsion. This is essentially what I'm calling a saffron dijonnaise, for lack of a better term. I'm gonna start by taking some lemon juice, squeezing that into a little bowl, and what I'm gonna add to it is a pretty generous pinch of saffron. This is one of those ingredients, kind of like foie gras or caviar. If you're gonna use it, you wanna make sure people taste it, so you need to be a little bit generous with it. I'm actually using it twice here. I will use the kind of lemon pickled filaments as a garnish, as well as we're using the very aromatic lemon juice to season the emulsion later. So I'm getting a little bit of a bang for my buck here, because this stuff is not cheap. So let's let this sit for just a second. We're gonna make our mayo next. I got 2 eggs here. Need just the yolks from those. And here is actually a great segment I'm gonna call Mayo Making 101. I'm about to show you a way to make mayonnaise by hand that's pretty much foolproof. You will never break your mayonnaise if you follow this method. I can guarantee it. I loved teaching this technique to apprentices, and I hold this move in very high regard because for a large part of my cooking career, I could not make a mayonnaise by hand. I was the RoboCoupe or the blender mayo guy. No longer, we're using this. Get yourself a nice little setup like I've got here, a pot with a towel to hold your bowl, and you can use it if your pot starts to shift. You just use your hip and hold the pot in place. So I've got my 2 yolks here. What you basically want to do now is add about half the volume of that in Dijon mustard. And this move scales pretty well if you want to make any amount of mayonnaise. You just kind of eyeball about half the volume. If it looks, make a little dollop of mustard that looks like about 1 egg yolk in this case, because we're using 2 yolks. Mustard, in addition to the lecithin that's already in the yolks, is gonna ensure that your mayo doesn't split and make it generally tastier. Most mayo recipes have you add a little bit of mustard anyways, but in my opinion, most people don't either add enough or they add it towards the end. Just listen to Uncle Justin on this one. Next up, we want to add a liquid here. I prefer lemon juice right off the bat. We're going to use some of our saffron lemon juice here. I'll just strain off a little bit, maybe like a tablespoon. Oh, lemon seed got in there. Come here, little guy. And what this emulsion basically is, it's a fight between oil and water. They don't want to combine. When most people start a emulsion with just a egg yolk, there's more fat in that, so you give the fat kind of the advantage of the tip in the scales. So by adding a little bit of that lemon juice, we make sure that we tip the scales back in water's direction, because we're just gonna add some more oil right now. You can add salt now too. I start with just a little bit. We'll season it up a little bit more later. And I'm gonna combine fats in this recipe. So I've got a little bit of canola oil and a little bit of olive oil. So we're whisking. And I wanna whisk until the yolks and the mustard and the lemon juice are all nice and friendly together. Then and only then will I start to add oil, kind of drop by drop. It helps to use a squeeze bottle here. You can do it out of the bottle if you have a steady enough hand. And we're whisking, and we're whisking. You wanna make sure you don't get any droplets of oil. You want it to look like one homogeneous mass the entire time. If you want a super stiff mayo, you can do this over an ice bath. That'll basically make the oil seize up and it'll make a super, super, super tight mayo that you can almost cut. Once you get to a point where it starts to thicken, this is where you can start liberally adding oil. This is pretty much guaranteed you're not gonna split. Woo! Once I get to a point when it starts to look pretty nice, I will start to add a little bit of olive oil. This is so we can control the amount of olive oil in the emulsion. Olive oil tastes pretty heavy, and we don't want it to overpower the saffron taste or the mustard taste. And I will just go with canola until we reach our desired consistency. It's nice and thick. See, it's sticking to my whisk here. That's good. I'll add a little bit more of our saffron liquid. That's gonna not only act as the acid in the recipe, but it's also gonna make it a little bit more yellow than it already is. Mussels need to get picked, so let's crush that out. I'm just removing the mussel piece from the actual shell, so you just get the individual mussel pieces. Okay, done. Last up, remember that batter we didn't finish? So I'm just gonna take one egg, crack that into this, season it up with a little bit of salt, and I'm gonna add this, some turmeric. That is going to give us that nice yellow color that we want with this entire dish. It's gonna go along with our fire emoji color scheme, as well as give this dish that like, what is that flavor that we want? I've got some oil heated up to about 350 degrees, and I've coated the mussels super nice in our batter, so those are just gonna go down and fry. All right, I think these are good to go. Between the egg and the fermented and the baking soda, they puffed up quite a bit, which I'm pretty excited about. And I'll season them with just a touch of salt. I think 99% of fried foods taste better when they come out of the fryer and you add salt to them. Just kind of facts. Unless your batter's super salty, then stay away from that move. I'm gonna start by doing a pretty thick palette smear of our emulsion here. I'll just do 2 scoops like that. Make it so it's not thin in any direction, so nothing dries out. Next up, I'll add our mussels. Here, let's move you a little bit closer. I've piled up our mussels next to that because we don't want them to sit on the mayo, so that by the time you get to the bottom ones, they'll be all soggy and gross in the mayo. Thinking about you in this pickup. Last but not least, our beautiful saffron pickled filaments. We're gonna spread those all over this saffron emulsion. You know what else would be really good on this, I think, is some lemon zest. So I grabbed some. That is our fermented lentil fried mussels with a saffron emulsion and a little bit of lemon. Let's taste it up, shall we? So the idea being you take one of these, kind of drag it through. Super good. The mussel's still juicy. Saffron adds that element of luxury as well as a really, really nice aroma. I actually taste the lentils. It's got that little bit of funky sour in the batter. Killed it. Thanks so much for watching DoD. This has been episode 8. We went in a little bit of an interesting direction on this one. I used a few Indian techniques and flavors. Not something that I normally do, but I think that with my background and my experience, fusion with Indian kind of like, I've been having this hankering to use like yogurt and lentils and spices lately. So I was super excited to make this one. And we ended up with a pretty delicious result, so why fight it? You know what I mean? I hope you're just as excited as I am for more dishes like this going forward. I'm Justin Khanna. Have a good one.